Um,
Mhm.
and now her mother, come on, my slides are not working now.
No,
There we go.
There's Eleanor Fagan.
Yeah, there we go. Her mother is Sarah Sadie Fagan. We don't know her age, and so at the time of Eleanor's birth, and I've seen her as young as 13 and as old as 19 in the biography. So there's a question how old she was at the time. This is interesting. There we go. Come on. I'm having some interesting troubles here. So it's Clarence, this is her father, Clarence Holiday, who was born in 1898. So we know he was 16 at the time that this all occurs. They meet in Baltimore. Well, first of all,
he's going to be showing a lot of photographs.
yeah, so hold it for a second. So he is
Would you please mute everybody? We can hear people speaking in the background.
Yeah, let me mute all. Everybody's muted now except me. Power. All right. So Clarence is 16 at the time. They meet and go to a park. Things happen and she gets pregnant. He's not interested in being a father. He leaves because he's more interested in being a musician. He is they're living in Baltimore, and he actually knows Elmer Snowden, who goes on to be banjo player with the first Duke Ellington band. And his early career, he plays with U.B. Blake. Now, okay, something has happened to my PowerPoint slides, and you're seeing a direction that should not be occurring. This is interesting. So the first failure has occurred. Let me come back over here. I'm going to be bouncing around a bit, trying to get around the failure of my technology. Logie scene. All right. So Clarence, hold it. Do we need to? Okay. So Clarence isn't interested in being a father. He takes off. Sadie's parents are not happy that she's pregnant and kick her out. So she goes to Philadelphia and has Eleanor there. Then she comes back to Baltimore, leaves Eleanor with her half-sister Eva, and then she embarks upon a series of jobs that takes her away for much of the first decade of Eleanor's life. Sadie takes on jobs that are initially called transportation jobs, which is basically she is working as a traveling companion for wealthy people who wanted somebody to have a maid or a valet while they're out traveling on the railroad car. So she's gone much of Eleanor's early life. Eleanor obviously is having problems. She initially goes to St. Francis Academy, which is a private Catholic school, but she doesn't do well. And by the time she is 9 years old, she has been so truant from school that she comes to the attention of the truancy people, and she is put into the House of Good Shepherd, where she is baptized Catholic. When she gets out, her mother's now living in Baltimore, running a cafe. And so she's starting to live with her mother. She's 11 years old when her mother comes home and finds a neighbor trying to rape her. She nearly kills the man that's trying to rape Eleanor. Eleanor is put back into the House of Good Shepherd because she's a material witness in a trial. When she comes out, Sadie has moved to New York City, excuse me, and soon Eleanor follows. And I have a slide out of order. Hopefully we'll see what happens here. So she ends up in New York City, where her mother has become a prostitute, and she soon joins her mother as a prostitute. She's a prostitute by the time she is 13 years old. She ends up being arrested, and she ends up going to prison, which should be my next slide, but it's not. Okay, so she comes out of prison, and what ends up happening when she comes out of prison is she starts her musical career, which is quite interesting because as she has no musical education, she never learns how to read music. And she says her only musical education came from listening to records. And her two biggest people to listen to were Bessie Smith and Louis Armstrong. Bessie Smith, excuse me, Bessie Smith, there we go, is part of a group of singers called the Red Hot Mamas. They were blues singers who became very popular and had a big influence on the music community, especially on female vocalists. In 1925, Bessie Smith is in New York City getting ready to record, and she ends up hiring the young trumpet player Louis Armstrong, who's not known at this time. He's been living in Chicago, and he's just recently moved to New York City because Fletcher Henderson, the big dance leader in town, has asked him to play in the band. So Bessie Smith could have had anybody she wanted, but she ends up for this series of records where she's at the peak of her success, hiring this unknown trumpet player to join her. And we're going to hear a recording from that period of time that Eleanor probably listened to, is Bessie Smith's version of St. Louis Blues. So Eleonora is absorbing from the two great, well, I should back up. Those series of recording that Bessie Smith did in 1925 that included Louis Armstrong helped make Louis Armstrong famous. And when he moved back to Chicago, was able to launch into the Hot 5, Hot 7. So Eleanor is listening to these two. She's absorbing, and she's also listening to the fact that Louis does a lot of singing too, and absorbs that as he starts doing that. So she says these are the two biggest influences. Now, this is when Billie starts to emerge, and it comes out like this. She is enamored with the silent movie star Billie Dove, who was a major actress. She ended up starring in and headlining many silent films, and was able to make the transition to talking films. She was also the type of actress who would grace the cover of the fan magazines that undoubtedly Eleonora would be reading. And so she adopts the name Billie as her first name. Here's a little clip of one of Billie Dove's movies. It's a silent movie, so there's no sound. So Billie Dove actually stars as a very free-spirited woman in a lot of her films, and that seems to have appealed to Billie Holiday. So she ends up teaming up with Kenneth Holland, who is a saxophone player 6 years her senior. And they start, and she's 14 years old at this time. They start going to the nightclubs in 1929 through 1931. Basically, what is happening is she's using him to get into the clubs. And then because she's with a musician, when she asked to sing, the bands were more likely to let her sing when she was accompanied by a musician. And she starts catching people's attention. Benny Goodman, who's just a few years older than her, about the same age as Kenneth, says he hears her in the clubs at this time and is wowed by this teenager. Billie and Kenneth work together. This is a picture of them later on. Kenneth goes on to play with various bands as a sideman. So they're going out and they're playing in the clubs in Harlem. And I came across this map of clubs from the 20s through the 40s. They're just clustered in one spot. Well, New York being big, it's still clustered. And she played in places at like the Log Cabin, also known as Pod and Jerry's, the Alhambra, which was a major theater, the Elks Club, which held dances and such. And so she's playing and singing in the major clubs of the day and being heard by up and coming musicians. This is where she meets up with her father. Her father, by this time, has joined the Fletcher Henderson band. This is the same Fletcher Henderson that brought Louis Armstrong to New York City. Fletcher Henderson is a major dance leader at this time. And by this time, Clarence has changed his last name from Halliday to Holiday. It is not the warm, fuzzy meeting that Billie was hoping for, but it ended up giving her she ended up adopting the last name Holiday like her father. We will see one more interaction between the two of them. It is while she is playing in the clubs that she meets John Hammond hears her. John Hammond is from the Vanderbilt family, and jokingly, he's from the poor side. They're only millionaires rather than multimillionaires. And instead of being a rich playboy, ne'er-do-well, doing nothing, he was very interested in music, especially of as he would put it, Negro Americans, and was very instrumental in the careers of many people over the years. He is, when we say discovered, they're already performing. He's the one that brings them to attention. So he, quote, discovers Count Basie. He discovers Bob Dylan and Benny Goodman. He also is an instrumental with Bruce Springsteen, as well as Aretha Franklin, George Benson, and Billie Holiday. And in fact, when he hears Billie Holiday, it had a huge impact on him, to the point where he says, she was the first girl singer I'd come across who actually sang like an improvised jazz genius. So he's at the beginning of his, let me back up. He's friends with Benny Goodman, having discovered him and is nurturing his career. He goes to Benny and says, I've heard this great singer. And Benny says, I've heard her too. And they end up going to Columbia Records, where Benny records a couple of songs with her. Notice she is, excuse me, this is one of the songs that recorded. It didn't do well, but the song that we are going to hear did well. It sold 5,000 copies, which was an incredible song, being a major hit for her, and she's only 18. So here is Billie's first hit.
I jumped out of the frying pan and right into the fire when I lost me a cheating man and got a no-count lie. Swipe the old one for the new one. Now the new one's breaking my heart. I jumped out of the frying pan and right into the fire. Lord, right into the fire.
Now, her mother has opened up a boarding house, a legitimate boarding house, not a brothel. And one of the tenants is Lester Young, who is an up-and-coming saxophone player, playing with Count Basie's band. And he's living at the boarding house and becomes friends with Billie Holiday. he is the one that gives her the nickname Lady Day, and she's the one that gives him the nickname Prez. They were friends throughout most of their lives. They were possibly lovers, and unfortunately, he is the one that introduced her to heroin. So their careers are intermingled through much of their lives. Duke Ellington comes into the picture. He has just come back from doing a tour in England in 1933, where he is lauded as a great composer. And he has come back and he writes his first piece of art music, a symphonic piece called A Rhapsody of Negro Life, which is turned into a film called Symphony in Black. He had originally desired to have, well, he'd always intended to have part of it sung. And then he heard Billie Holiday singing. She's 19 years old this time. He is so wowed by her that he has her in this film. And this is considered a major film in the sense that it's the first Black film featuring Black music about Black life. And it's Billie Holiday's first video appearance.
My man's gone, I feel forlorn. I've got those lost my man blues. He didn't treat me fair. It's more than I can bear. I've got those lost my man blues. I've got those lost my man. Can't get him back again.
John Hammond brings Billie Holiday to Teddy Wilson. Now, Teddy Wilson is a friend with Benny Goodman, so he already knows about Billie Holiday. And here he is, Teddy Wilson playing with Benny Goodman. Benny Goodman was the first white musician to really use Black musicians. This was a major feat. Again, like a lot of the other musicians that in Billie's life, there was a long career between the two of them. John Hammond brings them to Brunswick Records to do recordings. And Brunswick wasn't too thrilled about Billie Holiday. They were looking for somebody like Cleo Brown, who was a major jazz blues singer of the day who had hit records. And they didn't see that in Billie. And that is until the first two songs they recorded and were released. Mrs. Brown to You, which did well, but then there was this song that just blew everybody's socks off.
What a little moonlight can do. Ooh, what a little moonlight can do to you. You're in love, your heart's a fluttering all day long. You only stutter 'cause your poor tongue just will not utter the word, I love you. What a little moonlight can do. Wait a while till little moonbeam comes peeping through. You get bold, you can't resist him, and all you say when you have kissed him is ooh. What a little moonlight can do.
That song, along with dozens of others by Teddy Wilson with Billie Holiday singing, went on to sell 5,000, 10,000 copies. This one that I have up here sold 15,000 copies. John Hammond went on to say this, that Brunswick was broke and was near ready to declare bankruptcy. And Billie Holiday and Teddy Wilson, when they came in with no arrangements. They did it in the studio. Basically, Billie Holiday coaching the group through how she wanted to do the song. And Billie took straight fee rather than royalties. In turn, the records sold so well that those records rescued Brunswick from disaster. She goes on to work with Count Basie after her relationship with Teddy Wilson. Count Basie was looking for a singer and brings her on board. And she does quite well. And in fact, they have a battle of the bands where they're going up against Chick Webb. Chick Webb's singer was Ella Fitzgerald. It's one of those competitions where they're at the Savoy and Chick Webb's band is the house band. Ella wins the competition because she's the local favorite, but a lot of the critics said that Billie held her own. Though there was a rivalry in terms of musical style, the two of them were actually good friends. Billie did not get along in the Count Basie band initially, though they do play together a lot. What ends up happening is they go on tour. They're touring through the South, and Billie finds that the amount of racism that she's exposed to in the South was more than she's ever seen, and it soured her. Plus, she liked to be in control of the songs and how she arranged them, and Count Basie let that happen. But there seems to have been a lot of resentment from the musicians. She's let go because of bad attitude, which may have been more male attitude rather than anything else. So she departs from the band, and within a month, she's playing with Artie Shaw. Artie Shaw is the other big clarinet player in the white swing era. Benny Goodman being the king of swing. And their tour, she becomes the first major Black singer to sing with a band. And they go on tour, but they run into problems again with racism. And Billie gets upset when she is called the N-word. And then what was the last thing for her was they were performing at the Lincoln Hotel Lincoln in New York City. She could not join the band in the bar, and she was told she had to take the service elevator to the room and to the stage, at which point said, I'm through. Now, there was no hard feelings between her and Artie Shaw, because when she forms her own band and records a few months later, Artie Shaw joins her. And so here is Billie Holiday leading her own band, Artie Shaw doing Summertime, which becomes a big hit for Billie.
And the living is easy. Fish are jumping and the cotton is high. Oh, your dad is rich and your ma is good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry.
Milt Gabler comes into the picture. Milt Gabler is one of those people behind the scenes that make the musical world go. He's a jazz aficionado. He opens up a music store called Commodore Records, and then he forms his own label called Commodore Records, and he's involved in the career of people like Ella Fitzgerald, as well as Billie Holiday. He signs Billie to his new label, and she records the first of a couple of her songs that are identified with her and have major importance in her life. And the first one is the song Strange Fruit from 1939. It is written, the words are written by Abel Miropol, who is a Russian emigre teacher who's just outraged by the stories of lynchings in the South. His wife is Laura Duncan, who is a singer, and the two of them turn it into a song that they start performing around New York City in the late 30s. And in fact, they even perform it at a rally at Madison Square Garden. This is Barney Josephson, who is a nightclub owner and aficionado of the arts. He has hired Billie Holiday to sing at his and her orchestra to perform at his club. He's also heard the song Strange Fruit and urges Billie to sing it. Now, initially, Billie is not thrilled about the song because it's a very dark topic. But her father has died, and what had happened is he had been in World War I, had been a victim of a mustard gas attack that damaged his lungs. When in 1937, he becomes ill with respiratory problems because of the impact of mustard gas. He's denied treatment at the local hospital because he's Black. And when he finally gets into the veterans ward, he's put into the Jim Crow ward and not given antibiotics and dies of pneumonia. Billie ends up seeing that as a form of a lynching and decides that she needs to sing the song. And when she sings the song, she asked for the audience, the waiters, to ask the audience and the staff and everybody to be quiet for the song. And this is what she sang.
Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root. Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze. Strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees.
This song plays a huge role in her life, and we'll be coming back to it in a bit. The other song, another song that has importance in her life, is the song God Bless the Child. Her mother opened up a restaurant, and Billie gave her a fair amount of money to set it up, and gave her money a lot of times because it gave Sadie something to do other than worry about her. So she ends up running out of money one time, goes to her mother, asks for money. They have a huge argument. Her mother wouldn't give her the money. And as Billie is leaving, she utters the line to her mother, God bless the child that has his own. And that leads her to her song, writing the lyrics for it. And she works with a pianist that she worked with and also wrote a couple other songs with, Arthur Herzog Jr. And I'm hoping this is him because there's also a writer by the name of Arthur Herzog Jr., who's roughly the same age and look relatively similar, but they're not the same. So I'm going on the basis of the internet, and we know you can all believe the internet. So here is her song, God Bless the Child.
Thank you, and now I'd like you to know my favorite vocalist and America's #1 song stylist, Miss Billie Holiday.
Them that got shall have, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible says, and it still is news. Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own. That's got his own.
And as you can see, there she is working with Count Basie once again. Milt Gabler, who is the man standing behind Billie Holiday, has gone on to Decca Records, where he has become what's called an A&R man. That means he goes and finds artists and he brings them new material, the repertoire. He brings Billie Holiday with him And they record the song Lover Man. Billie is the first person to sing the song. Now, what has happened is that Frank and Ella Fitzgerald both have started recording with strings, and Billie has decided that if they can record with strings, she can record with strings. And that is how we come up with Lover Man, who is her version being considered one of the great versions and another one of her great hits.
I don't know why, but I'm feeling so sad. I long to try something I've never had. Never had no kissing. Oh, what I've been missing. Lover man, oh, where can you be? The night is cold and I'm so all alone. I'd give my soul just to call you my own. Got a moon above me, but no one to love me. Lover man, oh, where can you be?
She does her one and only movie called New Orleans in 1947. This was a movie that was supposed to have been about exalting the contributions of New Orleans to jazz, and then the studio heads got a hold of it and turned it into a standard love story. There are a lot of Billie and Louis Armstrong both talk about there being a lot of scenes that they recorded and musically that never got in. Billie being incensed that she had bought a white dress for one particular song that ended on the cutting room floor. Billie was happy to be singing with one of her heroes, and they had a nice friendship there. She introduces the song, Do You Know What It Means to Miss New Orleans, in this movie. And here is Billie with Louis Armstrong on cornet, Barney Bigard on clarinet, Meade Lux Lewis at piano, and the trombone player is Kid Ory, though you really can't see his face.
Do you know what it means to miss New Orleans and miss it each night and day? I know I'm not wrong. The feeling's getting stronger the longer I stay away. Miss the moss-covered vines, the tall sugar pines, where mockingbirds used to sing. And I'd like to see the lazy Mississippi hurrying to spring.
Now, by this time, the late 40s, mid 40s, Billie is a big star. She's making thousands of dollars a week. Her records are selling well, but she's become a very serious heroin addict, and she's spending money on her addiction, and it's starting to play havoc with her life. On top of, but she's able to keep it together, and she's performing around the country. And this is where Strange Fruit comes back into the story. Whenever she performed, especially to large Black audiences, the audiences got very quiet and the song was very popular. And it disturbed the powers to be, which brings us to this gentleman here, Harry Jacob Anslinger. He is the ultimate hardcore anti-drug warrior. He started his career in prohibition, enforcing the prohibition laws. Interestingly enough, while prohibition was in existence, he thought there was nothing wrong with marijuana. When prohibition ended, somebody pointed out he needed a job, and he jumped on the anti-marijuana bandwagon to the point where he is considered the godfather of the anti-marijuana movement in the United States. He ends up also being very anti-Black performers, especially jazz performers. He called jazz satanic music. He believed that they were leading, the jazz musicians was mongrel music leading America astray, and their drug addiction was part of it. And not just heroin, he targeted them on all sorts of drugs. He had a folder that he had on musicians like Louis Armstrong, Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, and others who he believed were under the influence of marijuana, and he was pushing to have a huge bust. Where it comes to the point about Billie Holiday, as I said, her singing Strange Fruit was causing waves. Jacob comes up and says to them, I know how to deal with this. And that is, he tells her to not sing Strange Fruit or there'll be consequences. That is the basis of a book that came out in Chasing the Scream about the drug war, and he focuses on that as part of it. And that became the basis of a recent movie that was just released on Hulu called The United States versus Billie Holiday. That is the actual name of the case. And Billie talks about the fact that when she goes before the court, her lawyer doesn't even show up because he says it's a lost cause. And she felt like it was the United States against her. Not only that, the prosecuting attorney called for leniency. The judge threw the book at her. And so she is sentenced to jail. And she ends up being, this is her mugshot, and she's incarcerated in the Alderson Federal Prison Camp in Alderson, West Virginia. She gets out on good behavior. And what is interesting now, she comes out, she's done her time, but the powers to be lean on the New York City people, and she's refused a cabaret license, which means she's unable to perform. She hasn't recorded for a couple of years, so she has no hit records. So she's thinking her career is over. Her friends instead say, let us put you into Carnegie Hall. She initially refuses the ideal of going into Carnegie Hall, and my slides are not working, hold it. Come over here. She initially refuses the idea of Carnegie Hall because she thinks it's a gimmick, but finally agrees to it. And it does so well that the concert sells out. This is the 1948 concert. She ends up doing Carnegie Hall, 2 more Carnegie Hall performances. And this is from the 1956 concert. And we're going to hear a little bit of the recording that was done in 1956.
In a really big way, we're going to turn to the vocal department. And it's very much of a pleasure just to be able to stand here and say, ladies and gentlemen, Lady Day, Billie Holiday.
All of me, why not take all of me? Can't you see I'm no good without you? Take my lips, I want to lose them. Take my arms, I'll never use them. Your goodbye left me with eyes that cry. How can I go on, dear, without you? You took the part that once was my heart, so why not take all of me?
Her stay in prison didn't seem to have impacted her popularity. Here is the 1949, she's on the cover of Ebony in 1949 with an article claiming I'm cured for good, which turned out not to be the case. Though she did not do well on the big screen, the little screen, the TV loved her, and she appeared on multiple shows. Again, this is after having been convicted of a federal offense of drug possession. So she ends up, here we can see her on a radio TV show with Count Basie. One of her last performances of her life takes place in London on a show. And people comment that her voice is starting to show the wear and tear of the drug use that she's been going through.
Please don't talk about me when I'm gone. No, our friendship ceases from now. And if you can't say anything real nice, just don't talk at all. That's my advice. We're parting, you go your way, and I'll go mine. It's best that we do. Here's a kiss. I hope that this brings lots of luck to you. It makes no difference how I carry on. Please don't talk about me when I'm gone.
Now, that's 3 months before she dies. Her health starts failing to the point where her friends urge her to go to the hospital. She ends up going into the hospital. She's diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver. She's only 44 years old, which gives you an idea of how hard a life she's been leading. Now, Anslinger is not through with her. Harry Jacob Anslinger finds out that she's in the hospital. There's a claim that she had heroin with her in the hospital. Whether that's true or not is unknown. She is so weak that she can not get out of bed, but Anslinger has her handcuffed to the bed. She ends up dying of cirrhosis of the liver. She is, like I said, only 44 years old. It was a shock for a lot of people. And this is her funeral. At the Church of St. Paul the Apostle. These are people who could not get in. Thousands of people came for the funeral. People who compare it to the crowds that showed up for Hank Williams Sr. when he died, same sort of thing, because she talked to the average person and the average person came. She is buried in St. Raymond's Cemetery, and this is her headstone, and she's buried, her mother is buried next to her. She had many accolades, but I think one of the greatest accolades comes from Frank Sinatra here, giving her his autograph. He did an interview in Ebony magazine in 1958. And I think what he says is the last several lines. Billie, who was and still remains the greatest single musical influence on me, Lady Day is unquestionably the most important popular singing influence on American popular singing in the last 20 years. I have friends who are singers, especially female singers, who are enamored with Billie Holiday, who were born after she passed away. So that is the life and times of Billie Holiday. Are there any questions or comments here? Ooh, silence.
I
heard.
Okay, one at a time. Go. He says.
I heard Etta James on the radio one time saying that she was in the recording studio and two men came in with holding Billie up. She couldn't walk. She couldn't walk on her feet. But she said to Etta James, she says, "Don't let them do to you what they did to me."
That could be referring to the fact that she got involved with drugs and unlike a lot of drug addicts, she blamed everybody but herself for getting involved in it. And it also could be about the politics of the day. I mean, she was hounded. Anslinger hounded a lot of musicians. He hounded Charlie Parker, Louis Armstrong, and also realized this is the period of time that they were going after Paul Robeson. He wasn't being chased after for drugs. He's being chased after for politics. The Peekskill riot, where he was holding a civil rights rally that was attacked by racists, happens in 1949, and he's called before HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee, in 48 and 47. So there was a huge movement against Black artists, especially those who were seen as being militant. Any other questions or comments?
I want to say, I watched the movie United States Against Billie Holiday, and you have so many more facts than they do. I want to commend you. You do such a marvelous job. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I am not constrained by the need to meet the demands of studio heads to develop a entertainment package. So from the sounds of it, there was a lot of meddling in the story behind the scenes in trying to get it right. So I do commend them for trying to do a story, but any biopic is going to be hampered by the fact that they're going to take liberties and they're not going to tell the story because it's not incumbent upon them to tell the story. They just tell a story.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments here? Yeah.
Could you put your chat, your PayPal address in the chat?
I will put it up on the screen, and I will also put it up in the chat. There it is. Actually, I should be able to make it bigger. No, not that makes it a little too big. There we go. Now you don't pay attention to the man behind the curtains. There's that. And I will put here for those of you who would wipe. Here it is in the. Oh, come on. Yeah. Me. Okay. You would think I did learn how to type the way I'm typing here, but we'll get it together. Gordon Herman. All right. Any other questions here before we wrap it? And I don't think you can wrap it up here. Sorry. There we go. Oh, there is no space. Sorry.
How long was she in?
What's on tap?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So it was two questions. What was the question? How long was
She in prison for? How long was she in prison?
She was in prison. I think the sentence was for 2 years, and she was out in 18 months for good behavior.
Wow.
Basically. So yeah, but it's a fairly long time, and she was also in prison prior to going in, so she was out of circulation for almost 2.5, 3 years. Which is interesting that her career survived that, which gives a testament to how strong a performer, a connection she had with her audience. Any other questions or comments here?
The Mirapole who wrote Strange Fruit, was that a relationship to the Mirapoles who adopted the Rosenberg kids?
Yes, the very same person. And in fact, along the lines of the Rosenberg story, there's information now that the prosecutors held exculpatory evidence on them. So there is a possibility that the Rosenbergs were railroaded. So yes, that's a good point. He did adopt the Rosenbergs' children.
Who did?
Abel Mirapole, who wrote the lyrics for Strange Fruit.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions?
So who's next, Gordon?
Oh, who's next?
Next,
we're doing, if I remember the order, next in April is the Carter family. Then I believe it's Irving Berlin in May. June is George Gershwin, and then July is Leonard Bernstein. That's what I have laid.
Oh, wow.
Several months. And will be adopting more of those new techniques that you saw me.
Yeah, they
using.
look good.
Thank you. They
Yeah.
take a lot of effort, but yeah, I decided I needed I was watching I recorded myself and I was watching myself and I bored myself. So I said, no, can't have that. So yeah, I'm an audio person, but because of the pandemic, I've had to do more video work, and I'm learning that video is much more active than I've been using it. And in fact, I realized I've been using PowerPoint as a glorified slideshow, and have learned that people actually do animation with it. I mean, I've seen, we're not talking CGI, Pixar type stuff, but I mean, people have put together some fairly good animation using PowerPoint techniques. So I'm also learning more about how to make videos work. And so, yeah, we'll be seeing that. I'm becoming a vidiot.
That one on the Carter family, that's that June Carter Cash.
Yes, yes, June, we'll be talking about, there's actually 4 generations of the Carter family. I'll focus on 3 because the 4th generation really never got off the ground. I will mention them, but we won't hear much about them because we haven't heard much about them. Yeah, so yeah, and it's an interesting story, and it is, we'll be talking a lot about the rural-urban divide that is still present today. Any other questions or comments here?
Well, thank you very much, Doctor.
Yeah, no, I'm not a doctor. Please don't do that.
Well, you should be, and I'm going to nominate you for an honorary doctorate.
Okay, but yeah, all right. I appreciate that, but then I might get more of a swollen head than I already have. All right. Anything else? If not, I'll see you all in April with the Carter family. It's been a pleasure to see you all later.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
An hour later, the incident sparked months of protests for racial justice. From Minneapolis, here's our correspondent Barbara Plett-Usher.
This is a studio in a converted warehouse. About a dozen people are on the floor, crumping. That's a street dance which uses exaggerated, energetic movements to express raw emotion. And emotions are raw. The group surrounds and encourages individual dancers. Crumping has helped them work out their pain and anger in the months since George Floyd's death. And it will help them deal with the next phase, the trial of the man charged in the killing, Derek Chauvin. There is a lot at stake.